I am wired normally in myself, I'm wired more for results. I grew up with 3 brothers. They were very tough. And my dad was very tough. My dad's a doctor, but I will say people that my dad could have been in the military. So every time that anything was happening in my house, my dad was all about, you need to have A+ and nothing else, and don't come here to me crying. You better have a plan, right, for how things are going to get better. So I had to get rid of any emotion that I may have been born with to survive in my household with all of those men. Thankfully, I had an incredible mom who's all about relationships. So I think she was my saving grace when I was growing up. But as I entered the business world, I really thought that the business world was going to be the place where I will shine because, hey, I grew up with these tough guys. So clearly, I can make it in the business world. And I think I didn't realize until much later that those emotional intelligence skills are really the most important skills to be a great leader. Mm-hmm. I always thought it was all about what you know and all your incredible education because that's what my father, right, had valued so much in my life. So I always thought it was about being smart. And when I grew up at school, even just in high school and whatever, I was never the most popular girl in school, right? So the way I try to combat that was, well, I'm going to be the smartest. If I cannot be the prettiest, I'm going to be the smartest. So I grew up with these things in my head about how to be successful that were really not really true. They were, a base, they were a foundation, but that was not what was going to help me and allow me to make other people better, which was always my desire because I had that from my mother. My mother was an incredible hospitality person. She was giving of herself all the time. She embodies nothing but love for others. I mean, my mom is the one that taught me, if you don't have anything good to say about anyone, then don't say anything. And that was hard, right? Especially when you're a teenager and there's all this gossip going around. But I always try to make sure that I was honoring my mom by doing that, even if it was hard. And now I think that, oh my goodness, my mom would have been the most brilliant business leader if she would have ever had the chance. She would have been the most amazing leader in the world. And she is in her house and with those around her. But I didn't really realize that until I started getting feedback about my own leadership, right? And I still remember the first guy that ever told me about, you sound so smart, but do you know how you're coming across with other people? And, obviously I was in shock, but I was so grateful. And the best part of all is that this guy didn't even really work with me. He was not my boss. He didn't work directly with me. He was from another department. And the way he gave me this feedback was one, obviously, of shock, because as I said, nobody ever thinks that what you're doing is not what you're supposed to be doing. I mean, nobody does things intentionally wrong. Everybody wants to do great. But it really helped me think deeply about this, right? Obviously, when he told me this, I was resistant. I was angry. I didn't say anything. I obviously just say thank you because thankfully my mom had educated me to be polite. But internally, I was in this struggle and this battle, I don't think this is true. Clearly, right? He's just jealous or whatever. And I finally came to terms okay, why will he ever say this to me? He has nothing to gain. He doesn't work with me. He's not my boss. He really was just trying to shed some truth in my life that probably everybody else saw, but nobody was willing to have the courage to tell me. And that is what started in me a journey to try to understand that better. And then, of course, through life, you start to see a pattern, right? When more people tell you the same thing, you're like, oh, yeah, clearly I am the problem. And then I remember having this great boss at Chick-fil-A, and she told me, the only common denominator of all of our problems is ourselves. And I was like, oh, yes, absolutely, right? If I want to make things better in my world, probably I need to change myself, not try to change others. So that really started a journey for me. And then I remember I really believed that I would have not gotten this opportunity with Crumble if I would have not had this experience that I had. And I think it was either 2019 or something like that. But right before COVID started, my daughter is a big book reader and I love her so much. So every weekend I take her to Barnes & Noble. So she buys her books and I just go around looking also for new books or things. And I remember seeing this book on the shelf called Partnering by, yes, exactly, by Jan Allwine. And I've never heard of her. I've never heard anything about this book. And I read this book, and to me, that book really was almost like the last thing that I needed to fully transform myself from the inside. And I think really what I've learned is that to be a great leader, you have to have two things, I think. Many others, but two important things. One is you have to have an open mind, and you have to have an open heart. And if you are thinking about being smart, you're probably not going to have either. So you need to make sure that you change yourself to not thinking about being the smartest person in the room, but thinking about how can I be the most giving person in the room. And I think Simon Sinek talks a lot about this. How do you show up with a giving either heart or mind or whatever it is? And I think it's only when you truly, truly show up with a giving mind and a giving heart that you can make things better for everybody around you.